Hello, guys. My name is Jason Calder. This is Kristen Evans. We're physical therapists here at North Kansas City Hospital. We work in outpatient physical therapy. So we see lots of folks coming in from outside the hospital. We thought we'd take some time today to talk about what pain is. Now, Kristen and I both work in both have helped start this Move Plus clinic at North Kansas City Hospital. It's a chronic pain clinic that works specifically with people dealing with pain that's been there for a long time. So some of the most complicated pain problems that we see have come through this clinic, and we've seen some great results. So we have, I think it's been about 4 years.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I think it's been about 4 years that we've been doing the pain program specifically, and we've seen a lot of success in that. And so we wanted to take this opportunity today to talk about what pain is and how it works. And
So I think that one of the main points that we want to get across is that pain is complicated. I mean, if you look at the picture here, you can see the brain and with all the different points and the lines connecting to each other, and all those different areas in the brain where we're experiencing processing this information from our nervous system. And pain is complicated, and it has to do with lots of different things in our life, personally and with our brain and with our tissues. And so we're going to talk some more about that.
Yeah, let's start with the definition. This is from the International Association of the Study of Pain. And they say that pain is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience that's associated with actual or potential tissue damage, or described in terms of that damage. Now, that's kind of a mouthful. We'll unpack that a little bit. I wanted to point out, though, that they call it an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience. So pain is an experience.
Mm-hmm.
We often think that pain is primarily a sensation that's happening to us, and we'll unpack this a little bit more. But the pain is actually an experience that you have. And so, and Kristen, this is a great slide.
So this is a lovely picture here. This has a lot going on, but some things I want to draw your attention to is that squiggly line where it starts kind of flat, and then it goes up, and then it peaks, and it comes down, and then it flattens out again. And then we have the foot there. It looks like it's about ready to step on a nail, which
It's pretty gross.
Yeah. So this is a description of, or a visual kind of representation of our pain system, how it's really meant to be an alarm system to let us know about an actual problem or a potential problem that our body is going to encounter. So for this example, they have somebody getting ready to step on a nail, and you would want to know if you had a nail in your foot, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. So you could take it out, maybe go get a shot. It's going to be sore for a while. So that flattened kind of squiggly line to begin with is our resting state with our nervous system. So we have a little bit of electricity in our nerves at rest. And then you can see that little dot there that says alarm activates. So that's when your nerves get that stimulus, maybe that pressure of the on the bottom of your foot.
Pressure.
And then if that pressure is strong enough, then it'll send an impulse up from your foot into your spinal cord, and then from your spinal cord up into your brain. So we get that danger message that gets sent up into the brain.
I think it's important to point out here that there's this threshold level where a lot of stuff can happen below that threshold level before the danger message gets sent. So, your foot can take a lot of pressure before it's painful pressure. Now, if you're stepping on a nail and it's kind of quickly moves through that little bit of pressure to a very dangerous pressure, then you're of course quickly going up above that threshold line. But if you're below the threshold line, you're really not getting danger messages. You might feel pressure, you might feel, for example, you might feel heat is one of those sensations that you might feel below the threshold, but then burning is of course a whole different deal. So where you go above that threshold line.
So you can see that hashed line there, that's that threshold line that Jason was talking about. Then that message gets sent to the brain for interpretation. And what we want to see is that line where it's at its highest, and then it slowly starts to go back down. And that happens over time. If you step on a nail, your foot isn't sore forever, right? Things heal, maybe you're sore, kind of limping on it for a while, but then your system calms back down. So you can see where it says that alarm system calms back down to close to its kind of original, what we call like a resting state. So it's ready for the next potential problem that's going to come up. So that's what we want to happen and what we expect to happen with a painful experience.
So the voltage actually changes in the nerves. It has to reach a threshold to send a danger message. But that's really how our nociceptors work, how the fibers that are danger sensors really work in our system. Now, as we said, pain is complicated and there's many things that goes on. So once our nerves send that message up the spinal cord to the brain, our brain then is what takes over. And just like when you're, when you have a memory, for example, of something, many things can happen. For example, Kristen, I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah. So if you have you ever heard a song that like took you back?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, like to like a middle school skating party or something.
Yeah.
That time, like couples skate time, and Bobby Jenkins was across the thing. Okay, sorry, that maybe
exactly,
all
but
right.
Definitely songs bring me back to a specific time for sure.
So you hear a song and it affects your ear, right?
Yeah.
But then it's tied to all sorts of memories, maybe even feelings. Sometimes a certain smell will bring on those memories or an experience. And so pain is kind of a similar way, where it's not in one center. There's not like a pain center of the brain, but involves many areas that can involve our auditory, our visual centers of our brain, the memory, the emotional centers of our brain. It can involve our processing part of our brain. And so really our entire brain can be involved in different parts of this pain process. So pain is complicated, and we could call it more of like a neurotag. And this is something that Adrian Lowe and his group have described beautifully with this drawing. And so we just want to point out that there are many parts that go into pain, and when pain is happening, many parts of our brain can be affected.
And so something else that kind of going off of that pain is an output. So you can see at the top there, we're going to kind of break that down, where pain is really information that gets sent up from the nerve. So kind of like if you think back to the stepping on the nail analogy, where you step on the nail, we get that. It's not a pain message. It's really just a danger message up into the brain. And then the brain has to take into consideration, well, what's going on? Have I stepped on, been in a similar situation to this before? Or have I, and what happened? And it's that information that goes up into the brain and makes decision about, am I going to be producing a little bit of pain, a lot of pain, or no pain in response to this information that I've been given. And it attaches meaning to that information that's being sent up via the nerves.
Yeah, it says here, as far as the definition goes, that pain is a multi-system output activated by an individual's specific pain neural signature. The neural signature is activated whenever the brain concludes that the body tissues are in danger and action is required. I don't know about you, but I've had a situation where like you run your finger across a piece of paper just so, and you're like, oh, that's gonna hurt, right? That was felt exactly like some of those paper cuts that are just immobilizing, right? Where you can't do anything else. And you might hold your finger for a second. You're like, oh, that was bad. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, it's not bleeding. I'm good.
Yeah.
Where even that process of like feeling the feel of the paper, running it across there, and it's happened before to you, can cause pain. And it's real pain, even though there may not be danger.
Yeah, and I think that expectation of pain, or that anticipation because of your prior experiences with it, is important. That makes me think of like, I have 2 young kids, and so thinking about like getting shots or things at the doctor's office, that anticipation or that kind of knowing your past experience with shots, that they can even have some of that pain in anticipation of it, or if they're more anxious about the shot, and they're going to have more pain, or maybe if they're less anxious about it, that they're more comfortable and less upset after the shot too.
Yeah. So if we look at this chart over here, where it talks about how there are many factors: sensory input from the body, previous experiences, cultural factors, social or work environment things, expectations about consequences, and then our beliefs. our knowledge and our logic, all of these things are very involved in the pain process. So it's not as simple as the nerves and the voltage. It's not as simple as the stimuli. It's not as simple as what goes on in the spinal cord. It actually, pain doesn't happen without the brain.
Right. And you can see there where it says there's only one line where the sensory input from the body. So there's one example with the nerves and the information from the body, but then everything else, that prior experience, cultural factors, all the things that you list are those other influences on the pain that we feel.
That's right. And I think the context matters more than anything. I think that really does matter. All right, so let's talk, maybe if you would take a moment, Kristen, to talk just about what is acute pain and what is chronic pain. We hear these words a lot, so if you could kind of go through those.
Yeah, so we want to differentiate between acute and chronic pain. So acute pain is typically more recent kind of pain. So we have listed out here, so direct result of tissue damage or potential tissue damage, injury, trauma, or surgery, and can offer that protective function. And then if we want to define more chronic pain, so that's typically more ongoing pain, so that lasts longer than normal tissue healing time. That impairment is greater than than expected from physical findings or from the initial injury even. And then that pain is still there in absence of that identifiable tissue damage. And we look at a time frame lasting more than 3 to 6 months after that initial injury.
So if you had an ankle sprain, for example, and the ankle sprain, it happens, a week ago or 2 days ago, you're going to have probably pain from that ankle sprain. Yeah. But that is more on the acute side. Okay. But if you still have pain and the ankle sprain happened 2 years ago, that pain is still, of course, pain. Because
our tissues heal.
Yeah, tissues.
Our tissues are going to be healing over time. But sometimes that pain can just diverge from that healing process.
Yeah.
And then that kind of leads into this picture here where you have the example of like an ankle sprain. And then those initial hours, days, kind of few weeks, things maybe initially be swollen and sore and tender. And we have kind of the two different colored lines here. We've got the green, which is more of like the tissue healing, and then you have the blue, which is the pain that this person is feeling. And you can see how initially that the tissues and the pain kind of match each other. So as that green line is going up, the blue line is going up as well. And then as that blue line is kind of coming down, the green line is coming down too. But if you kind of move across that chart, you can see how the green line comes all the way down, but then that blue line, that pain starts to come up. So we have that divergence of the pain that's separate from the tissue injury that was initially there.
Whereas we would expect an ankle will be feeling better and better the more the tissues heal, pain may go on. And this is what can lead to a lot of worry and concern. And that's definitely part of the process when we're looking at why does sometimes pain stay acute and then heals up and it's better. This is what most people experience with an injury. But why do some people have such a hard time and develop chronic pain? And Vleland uses this model, and he a brilliant researcher, and we wanted to point it out, and I use this with some of my patients to point out up there at the top, it's the injury that happens kind of up there at the top. We all experience injuries and have, a lot of us have a pain experience when we have an injury, but there are two directions we can go. So we can go one direction, which is where we want to go, right? Which is you can see at the end there, it says recovery. Well, we have to go through this pain experience and then maybe no fear, confront the situation. So that might be resting, protecting, and then getting back to normal as our ankle sprain heals up and recovery, right? That's where we would hope. But some people, and for many people, because of their past experience and the many things that their system has experienced, they have a pain experience, and then they have what's called catastrophizing, which is basically their understanding of what's going on with them is super scary. And when it's super scary, their body wants to be more protective. I mean, if you go to a haunted house and somebody
I don't, because I'm such a scaredy cat.
But imagine if we put Kristen in a haunted house. We should do another video with you in a haunted house. Stay tuned, folks. We might do this in the future. So if Kristen's in a haunted house and it's dark and somebody touches Kristen on the shoulder, maybe a friend, and make sure they're there, you just jump through send. I mean, your reaction would be kind of more, right? That protective response is there. So again, fear, or in this case, catastrophizing about what's going on, can lead to higher sensitivity, and it can lead to pain-related fear, then fear of movement, avoidance. So now our ankle sprain, it's not getting better the way I thought, and so maybe now maybe I should rest it for another week and another week. And I've literally, I had a young patient who came in one time who had been resting his sprained ankle for 6 weeks, resting it, not walking on it, keeping it up. And it's just, what we understand is that can lead to disuse and even start to affect now us emotionally. Maybe that kid can't play soccer, they can't go back to work, their girlfriend dumped them because they can't go to the roller rink anymore. I keep going back to the roller rink, but and then that can actually lead to more pain. And so we start to develop this, you can see it's a circle where it can just keep going around and around again. And so we certainly want to understand this, because it's not all tissue that leads us one way or another.
Right? Recognize when that transition starts to happen, because if you have that better understanding of this potential pathway, if you can recognize within yourself maybe some of that catastrophizing or some of those kind of those experiences within the circle, because the earlier you can kind of intervene with some of those processes, the kind of more quickly you can get back to things.
We start to, I mean, it's like anything. The more we practice something, the better we get at it. And so if we continue to go around that roundabout loop, we start to develop ruts, right? And these patterns that are practiced. And it is harder to get out. The more you go around this loop of disuse, disability, fear, more pain, disuse, disability, fear, the more you go around that, the harder it is to get out. And so let's talk about kind of some of the numbers that are out there, what we know about how what's going on in our culture.
Yeah, so we know that pain is a problem, right? It's something that you've probably heard in the news, and it's getting a lot of focus too. But I mean, if you look at the statistics, I mean, that speaks for itself. So an estimated, 20.4%, so that's 50 million of US adults are having chronic pain. And then 8% of US adults had high impact chronic pain. So that 43% of people suffering from persistent pain have had it for 5 years or more.
What do you think this was 2018 data?
Yeah.
What do you think the pandemic did to this?
Man, I am sure it didn't help anything. It doesn't help anyone's stress or anxiety or any of that stuff too.
Like the haunted house, right?
Yeah. Everything's up a notch.
So for sure, we've seen that too. We've seen people's lives that have ended, and it took their achy back and made it the biggest problem they've ever had.
Or even just accessibility to doing what you were doing before. I think speaking to like the pandemic, like having being able to get to the gym or be active with your friends or be around family, and that kind of really had shifted. And we know those other inputs into our pain system that we talked about before on your slide, that can kind of definitely affect that.
Sometimes more than the tissue.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing here on this slide. It says pain does not have to be associated with observable tissue damage or have a detectable underlying cause, like that feel of a paper cut that wasn't actually a paper cut, very painful, right? It was really hurting for a second, even though there's no damage. And there are all sorts of pain conditions that really don't involve the tissue at all. I mean, things like fibromyalgia, for example, that's part of the definition is, they've done scans, they've done tests. There's not actually problems in the tissue problem. And again, that's a really important part of understanding that what is happening, because if people think there's a tissue problem, if they have pain, so often we are in that acute model of understanding pain, where we think, I'm hurting, there's something wrong, I gotta fix it.
That's concerning too. If you're hurting and you don't really understand what's going on, that concern with that area of your body is definitely going to be heightened. And that brings us to kind of having that understanding that we can have those biological different influences with pain. So you can have that kind of biological influence that you can see the circles here, the social influence, and then also the psychological kind of influence, and how all of those things together can affect our health.
And this is kind of the more modern way of looking at treating pain and teaching people about pain. Again, so often we're looking at only biologically driven factors. And if that's the only place we focus, especially if we're in chronic pain, right? And we've ruled out acute issues when we're now in chronic pain. If we continue to try to find a biological reason or a biological treatment, but that's not the biggest part of their problem, or it's only a third of what is actually going on with that person, their pain, we're only treating a portion of it.
Yeah, you're missing 2/3 of the problem.
Yeah, we've got to make sure that we're addressing everything. And some people are very confused when they come in and they see Kristen or I, and we're talking about things like, how are things going with your family? Like, how's your stress level?
How are you sleeping?
Yeah, I mean, these things, and they're like, well, I'm here for my back, thank you. What does that have to do with anything? But their back pain is from an injury that happened 3 years ago. So really, as far as the scans go and everything, we're not seeing an acute problem, a fracture or anything big. We need to address the whole person and their whole problem. Yeah. So speaking of a problem, this is gross. I'm sorry. This is my son's arm, and for him, that's a broken arm, folks. So this is my son. We just want to point out that we can have major tissue damage, and of course, this was a situation where my son, he's fine, by the way. They saved the arm. Yeah, this is years ago. He's doing great now. But yeah, this was a badly broken arm, and I was talking to him afterwards. I might get off that picture in case any of you are trying to eat lunch out there. So we'll go back. But with my son's broken arm, I was talking to him afterwards. I'm like, man, because he had broken his arm falling off of one of those big round hay bales.
Oh my gosh.
And he and his buddies had to run across this whole field then to get to the house to get help. And I'm like, did the dad, I was like, I thought the dad maybe came and got him or something. And he's like, no, as soon as it broke, I knew it was wrong. Something was wrong. I felt the pinch. And then we all started running, like all the kids started running. And I'm like, you were running? He's like, yeah. And at first my arm was really flopping around. He had to hold on to it. So it's just a terribly gross story about how he had no pain in that moment, right?
Wild.
And it's a massive amount of tissue damage. Here I am with, the potential of a paper cut immobilizing me for a moment, and my son is able to run. And some people say, well, that's adrenaline. Yeah, that is a part of it. That is that the body system realizes that he can't deal with the pain right now.
Yeah.
And so it sends a wash, even though there's a ton of damage messages coming up, the brain is saying no, and it's washing down all of these endorphins and enkephalins and adrenaline, all this stuff that's going to dampen that pain message so that he can go and get help, right?
It's like pain medication in your brain.
Yeah, and our brains produce that stuff, which is so cool. I have a story too, don't you?
I do. So this is my sweet daughter.
Is that a broken arm?
No, but so she is golfing here. My story has to do with golfing. I am not a very good golfer. So my daughter, she actually got some golf clubs that were gifted to her by my mother and father-in-law, who I love dearly. And so they brought the golf clubs over to our house. This was probably maybe a year or two ago. And so they're very excited because they love golfing, and they
love their granddaughter.
They love her, and me too, I'm sure. But so they brought the golf clubs, and they were so excited just watching her, like getting the golf clubs out, swinging, and I'm down there like trying to help her with it. I shouldn't have been the person to like help her with it, I guess. So she's like swinging, and then she has a good follow through right straight into my shin. Right into my shin. And but interestingly, it didn't hurt. And I was thinking to myself, I took a golf club to the shin. I kid you not, it does not hurt. And then I was thinking about it after. I had obvious swelling. I had a big goose egg on my shin. I had bruising.
So that's obviously tissue damage.
It was obviously,
bruising.
Had some tissue involvement for sure. But then I got to thinking about it, and I was like, I think it was the situation I was in, where I didn't want my daughter to feel bad. I didn't want my mother and father-in-law to feel bad. And I knew I was fine. I knew my leg wasn't pointed sideways. It wasn't flopping when I was trying to run. I knew I was fine. And so I think all those internal kind of dampening hormones and chemicals and things with our brain that just blocked those danger messages. Yeah, that situation really played into the pain that I felt. Now, I bet if I had an old injury or an old issue with that leg, or maybe I had a really bad experience with a golf club in the past, I might have had a different experience with that. But in that situation, my brain was really helping me not to experience as much pain as I could have.
Kind of decided what you were going to experience.
Yeah.
And it used all sorts of past, present, future kind of calculations at that time, and to figure out if this is
triaging kind of the information.
And it does it so quickly. That's the amazing thing about our brain. So we have one, oh man, it's lunchtime and I haven't eaten yet, and this is a killer slide because that is beautiful. So, but what pain is really like is it's like hunger. And we can, pain, so hunger is an experience. Our stomach can be empty, and our nerves from our stomach say, stomach's empty, like mine is, and you might be hungry. But have you ever been hungry and you saw somebody throw up? And then suddenly you're not hungry anymore, right? Yeah. Or you get busy and then you're not hungry. So the context has kind of changed. So the nerves say the same thing, but because the brain is weighing those things, it gives a different output. It gives you may not feel hungry. The other thing would be if you're totally full. Like let's say you had the best kale salad ever. It's the most kale you've ever eaten. You can't eat another bite, and the waitress says, would you like some dessert? And I'm like, no, I've eaten all the kale. But she comes by with a dessert tray and like, how about now? And you're like, oh, but I'll take the chocolate one, right? In the same way, our brain can decide, even though our nerves are saying stomach's full, our brain can decide the experience is hunger. I want to eat now, right? So we just have to understand that there's many things at play. Context matters more than anything in hunger, and it's the same way with our pain. And just like there can be complicating other psychosocial things, right? Like, I'm gonna get a little personal here. Have you ever been bored and hungry? Or sad and hungry, right? That you're eating that ice cream, you want that comfort food, or tired and hungry, right? There are other factors that can play in, just like other factors can play in to our pain experience. So I think on this one, we're going to kind of move quickly through this, but do you want to talk about the voltage again and what can happen? And
yeah, so this is just kind of another, if you remember that initial picture where we had that kind of peak and then everything settled back down to where it was before. So it's the same idea where we get that alarm that gets activated, we get that message that gets sent up into the brain, we get this pain that gets experienced, and then you can see where there's like two different kind of squiggly lines. We've got one that goes all the way back down, and then we've got that one that goes down a little bit and then straight across. So that little bit and straight across is kind of that representation where that system didn't wind back down or calm back down to where it was before. So it's extra sensitive. So it doesn't take much of a stimulus or maybe an activity or if something to kind of make that kind of give it a little stimulation there, and that will cross that threshold and then we'll get that pain that gets produced. So that's kind of that extra sensitive system that people can develop with ongoing pain.
And then things like the change of the weather can kick it off, right? Because it's so close to the threshold level.
Yeah.
Or even like being really frustrated or upset can start to even affect our nerves, because our nerves have receptors for different things, like temperature and like stress hormones. So that can definitely set off the system. Now, when we're talking about pain education and really kind of why our system does what it does, there's David Butler and Lorimer Moseley have a workbook. It's called Protectometer, and it's a great resource. I highly recommend it. But they use this idea of DIMS and SIMS. And DIMS are danger enemies, and SIMS are safety enemies. Sounds like appetizers, back to food. But so our system is always weighing how dangerous or how safe am I? And then any inputs that come into our system are a part of that weighing, right? And so if we have collected a lot of danger enemy input, like you in a haunted house, everything about that situation feels dangerous to you, doesn't it? So that when you have a sensation, it's going to be scary, painful, it's going to create a lot of adrenaline and the fight or flight thing. Whereas if you felt very safe about that, like being, or your friend touches you at church, right? Maybe that's an entirely different feeling.
Yeah, same stimulus, but different situation. Yeah.
And so our DIMS and our SIMS, what Butler and Moseley talk about, is we need to be SIM seekers. And this is something we can actually do to change how we feel, right? If we're seeking out things that we view as safe, for example, relationships, right? Hanging out with friends, that could be something that feels very safe. Going to work, that can feel like that could be either way, right? I mean, it could be one of those things where we feel like work is hurting us, and it could be a DIM, or going to work gives us purpose. It could be a SIM, something that creates that safety and purpose. Can you think of anything else maybe that are DIMs or SIMs?
Oh, I think definitely. I think it's interesting that you had said that the work could go either direction, because the sims and DIMS are going to be personal for people.
No.
And so you're going to have to do some self-reflection of like situations that help you feel safe, and people that help you feel safe, and maybe activities that help you feel safe,
Right.
And things that you enjoy doing. And then the same thing with being able to identify some of those danger in me too.
Yeah, I think, knowing you have a problem is the first step. So
Yeah.
like knowing that you maybe have a lot of the DIMS, the things that create this danger in me feeling are around you. I think that's helpful to note. And then I don't think it comes naturally that we seek SIMs. I think for us, it's easier to pile up our DIMS, or the things that make us feel dangerous, or the problems that we have. That's kind of easier to do. But so I think intentionally trying to seek out those SIMs can be very helpful in helping people modulate their pain response. Again, we're talking about 2/3 of kind of that 3-part model, right? Have to do with some of these SIMs and DIMs. So
it seems it's a different thought process about managing pain, because you're managing pain through kind of managing the other stuff that influences pain.
Absolutely. Well, we wanted to take just a moment and really talk about that, sensitivity can increase, right? Especially in chronic pain. Our system, the more it practices, can get more sensitive over time. Like Kristen said, the voltage can be very high near that threshold firing level. But as we create safe situations and move back into normal activities, our system can calm back down. We are very adaptable, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. And I think that idea of that last bullet there, so graded, kind of starting to move and starting to return to things that you were doing before, and having that improved understanding of those other things that can influence pain, has actually been shown to decrease the pain that we feel over time, which is cool, even if you've had pain for a month or years.
That's right. And we are, if we have breath in us, we are adaptable, right? We can still adapt. We're still learning, and our system is still learning to either be more sensitive or less sensitive. And so we just encourage you guys, if you or somebody you love is having a pain situation where they've been in pain for a long time, especially, and things aren't going like we would think with a tissue kind of healing, and things should be better by now, why are they not? To seek out some help from a physician or a physical therapist, or maybe a specialty program like ours. In our Move Plus program, we just wanted to take a moment to mention that, and we'll provide a link for that in the notes down below there to the Move Plus program, and you can read about it. But we involve not only the physical side, so movement and exercise and activity, but also the pain science, right?
Yeah, kind of that marriage of the moving and strengthening and stretching coupled with the understanding, because we just know how important that is.
Yeah. For this program in 2001, we keep very close data and outcome measures, and people who graduated from the program see 65% improvement. Overall.
That's huge.
Yeah. So I think it's neat to remind people that things can change, and you could have pain for years and years and years, but there's hope, and there's treatments out there available, and the science is always improving. We're always getting better at this. I mean, this is a very different talk than if we were giving this talk 25 years ago. Kristen would be in diapers. So but the science has changed over the past 25 years, and it's only getting better. And so there's a lot of hope out there, and I would say seek help if you need it. I think we do have a few minutes for questions. We were very close on time. We are both talkers, and so we're like, I don't know if we can get this in, but we did it. So if you have any questions, we are live right now, so we can take those questions. And if you don't have any questions now, but want to email us or something like that, we'll provide an email that you can send us questions and stuff. We'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Okay, great. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and enter those into the Q&A or the chat function at this time. And Jason and Kristen, I wanted to say thank you. I absolutely loved your presentation. I loved watching you guys kind of work with each other. It's obvious how passionate you guys are about this topic, and very, very knowledgeable.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we haven't had any questions come in. But we will go ahead, and whenever this is posted to YouTube, we will have an option for people to reach out to us with the questions if they have any, if they do arise. So I think we'll go ahead and close out. Thank you, guys.